campfire, story, or a creepypasta. It's a confession. If you're listening late at night alone, maybe with the lights off, good, that's how it happened to me too. And if you haven't already, subscribe to nightmarecrypt.algorithm. Because if stories like this disappear, people forget to recognize the warning signs when they matter most. I don't expect anyone to believe me. That's not why I'm writing this. I'm writing because the longer I stay quiet, the worse it gets. And because every time I hear a soft scraping sound in the dark, I'm reminded that silence didn't save me the first time. If you've ever had the feeling that something entered your life quietly, so quietly you didn't notice until it was too late, you'll understand why I'm scared now. I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid that whatever followed me home is patient. I'm afraid it learned me. I'm afraid it's still here. I haven't slept more than 2 hours in weeks. When I do drift off, I wake up convinced there's weight on my chest, a warmth moving across me, slow and deliberate, like something finding its favorite place to rest. I don't open my eyes anymore. I learned that lesson the hard way. This started with a cat. I know how that sounds. Harmless, almost stupid. If someone else told me this, I'd stop listening right about now. But that's the problem with things like this. They don't start the way you expect. Easy to explain away. I found the cat the same week everything else in my life started falling apart. The timing matters, even if I didn't realize it then. I had just moved into a small rental house outside a dying Midwestern town. The kind of place with one grocery store, 2 bars, and a lot of empty houses that never quite look abandoned, just paused. The house smelled like old wood and dust no matter how much I cleaned. At night, the pipes knocked in a way that sounded almost intentional, like someone testing the walls. The first night I stayed there, I dreamed I was being watched. I woke up convinced I'd heard breathing. That was before the cat. I found him on my porch 3 days later. Black fur, medium-sized, no collar. He was sitting perfectly still, tail wrapped neatly around his paws, staring at my front door like he'd been waiting for permission. I remember thinking how strange it was that he didn't flinch when I opened the door. Most strays bolt. This one just looked up at me, eyes wide and unblinking. Not glowing, not unnatural, just too focused. "You lost?" I asked, feeling ridiculous. He didn't meow. That should have bothered me more than it did. I crouched down and held out my hand. He leaned into it immediately, pressing his head against my fingers, like he already knew me. His fur was warm, clean. That didn't make sense for a stray, but I didn't question it. I needed the company more than I needed answers. I brought him inside. I told myself I'd check for a microchip the next day. That next day never really came. At first, everything was normal enough. He followed me from room to room. He didn't jump on counters, didn't scratch furniture, didn't knock things over. He used the litter box like he'd been trained. Too well trained. I named him Bishop, mostly because it felt wrong to call him something cute. The first strange thing happened that night. I woke up around 2:30 a.m. to the sound of paws on hardwood. Slow, deliberate, not wandering, pacing. I lay there listening as Bishop walked from the bedroom door to the foot of the bed and stopped. I felt the mattress dip. He curled up against my legs, heavier than I expected. I remember thinking he felt too heavy for his size, like dead weight. I didn't move. I didn't open my eyes. I fell back asleep. In the morning, I found the bedroom door closed. I never close it. I told myself I must have done it half asleep. People do weird things when they're tired. That's what I kept telling myself. That's what I kept doing for weeks. Little things started adding up. I'd come home and find cabinets open, lights on in rooms I hadn't entered. The faint smell of something metallic in the air, gone as soon as I noticed it. Bishop was always there, always watching, always quiet. The first time I realized something was wrong, it was because of the mirror. I was brushing my teeth before work, half awake, when I noticed Bishop sitting behind me in the reflection. He was on the edge of the bathtub, staring at my back. I spit, rinsed, and glanced down to reach for a towel. When I looked back up, he was closer. Not moved closer, already closer. Close enough that I could see individual hairs around his eyes. I turned around. He was still on the tub. Same distance. My reflection lagged, just enough to notice. My heart started racing. I leaned forward, then back. The reflection followed, but Bishop didn't move at all. I laughed it off. Nervous reflex. Mirrors do weird things with light. Old houses settle. Sleep deprivation messes with perception. That night I dreamed I was locked inside my own body, watching myself walk through the house while something else wore my face wrong. When I woke up, my throat hurt like I'd been screaming. I found scratches on the inside of my bedroom door. Not deep, not dramatic, like someone testing the surface. I started keeping the door open after that. Bishop began sleeping on my chest. Every night, if I tried to move him, he'd dig his claws in. Not enough to break skin, just enough to remind me he was there. His purring wasn't soothing. It was irregular, stuttering, like it was struggling to remember the rhythm. I stopped sleeping altogether. I started hearing things when I was awake. The sound of something jumping down from counters I wasn't in the room to see. A low, almost conversational noise that stopped the second I focused on it. One night, I heard my name. It came from the hallway. It sounded like me. That was the first time I truly panicked. I grabbed my phone and locked myself in the bathroom. Bishop scratched at the door, not frantically, slowly, patiently, one claw at a time. That's when I realized something that made my stomach drop. The scratching pattern matched the marks on the door from the inside. If you're still listening, this is where I'd tell you to subscribe to Nightmare Crypt. Not for more stories, because if you've ever experienced something like this, you know hearing someone else say it out loud matters. It means you're not alone. The house stopped feeling empty after that. Even when Bishop wasn't in the room, I felt watched, not observed, assessed. Like something was checking whether I noticed the changes it was making. The cat began appearing in places he couldn't physically reach. On top of the fridge, inside closed closets, sitting beneath my bed when there wasn't space for him to fit. I tried to leave. That was the moment I realized I wasn't in control anymore. I packed a bag and walked to the front door. Bishop sat in front of it, blocking the exit. I stepped around him and felt a pressure in my head so intense I dropped to my knees. The pain stopped the moment I stepped back inside. Bishop purred. That was the first time I understood something was wearing my life like a loose jacket, and it was tightening the fit. I started keeping notes after that. Not because I thought I'd forget, because I was afraid I'd start accepting things I shouldn't. I wrote down times, sounds, where Bishop was when something happened. I needed proof that I wasn't just losing it. The problem was the notes didn't stay consistent. I'd write something down, go back later, and find details changed. Words crossed out I didn't remember crossing out. Times adjusted by a few minutes. Sometimes whole sentences gone, replaced with nothing but indentation, like something had erased the idea, but left the space where it used to be. Bishop always watched when I wrote. He'd sit on the corner of the desk, tail wrapped tight, eyes following the pen instead of my hand. If I stopped writing, he'd tilt his head, just slightly, like he was waiting for me to continue. I tried calling people. My sister didn't answer. My phone showed the call went through, but when I checked later, there was no record. Same thing with a friend from work. Text sent, never delivered. Just gone. I tested it by sending myself a message. It vanished. That was the moment the dread stopped being abstract and became physical. My mouth went dry. My hands shook so badly I had to sit down on the kitchen floor. I remember pressing my palms flat against the tile, grounding myself, telling myself this was real. I was real. The floor was cold and solid in mine. Bishop padded into the kitchen and sat across from me. We stared at each other for a long time. Then he blinked. And when he opened his eyes again, I knew, without any dramatic shift, without glowing pupils or monstrous changes, that whatever was looking back at me was not a cat. It was using one. The moment of pure panic came that night. I woke up, unable to breathe, not choking, not gasping, just paused. My lungs refused to move. My chest felt locked, like something had pressed a hand down and decided that was enough air for me. I opened my eyes. Bishop was sitting on my chest. His weight was wrong, too heavy, crushing. His paws were planted on my collarbones, claws lightly embedded, holding me in place. His face was inches from mine, whiskers brushing my cheeks. I could smell his breath. It smelled like copper and something old. I tried to scream. Nothing came out. His mouth opened. It didn't meow. It whispered. I fit better now. The words came out of him wrong, layered, like multiple voices speaking at slightly different speeds. One of them was mine. That broke something in me. My body convulsed. Instinct took over. I bucked, twisted, shoved with everything I had left. The pressure snapped, and suddenly I was breathing again, sucking air so hard my throat burned. Bishop was gone. I sat against the bedroom wall with a kitchen knife in my hand until sunrise, listening to the house settle, every creak sounding like movement, every silence screaming. When morning came, I noticed scratches on my collarbones, 4 of them, perfectly even. The paralyzing dread didn't come with action, it came with understanding. I realized Bishop didn't need to stop me from leaving anymore, because I wasn't trying. The thought of stepping outside felt wrong in a way I can't fully explain. Not scary, incorrect, like trying to walk into traffic or drink bleach. My brain rejected the idea before fear could even surface. The house felt safer. That terrified me. I noticed other changes. I stopped locking doors, stopped checking windows. I started leaving lights off at night because I didn't like how shadows behaved when they were lit. I found myself talking out loud to the empty rooms, explaining my actions, justifying my thoughts. Sometimes I'd hear responses, not voices, agreement, a sense of approval that settled over me like a warm blanket when I did something right. Bishop reappeared gradually, first at the edge of rooms, then sitting beside me again, then sleeping near my head, never on my chest again. Not yet. I stopped trying to get rid of him. That realization hit me like a punch to the gut when it finally surfaced. I could have opened the door and let him out while he slept. I could have tried again. I didn't. Because some part of me didn't want him gone. That part scared me more than anything else. The full descent happened in the basement. I hadn't gone down there since I moved in. It smelled like damp concrete and old cardboard, and something about the darkness down there felt layered, like it had depth. One night I heard a thump from below. Just one, then silence. I stood at the top of the stairs for a long time, listening. Bishop sat behind me, so close I could feel his warmth against my calves. I don't know why I went down. That's the truth. There was no curiosity, no bravery, just a sense of obligation, like I'd been called. The basement light flickered on, revealing bare walls, exposed beams, and something I hadn't noticed before. A door. It was set into the far wall, uneven like it had been added later. The wood was darker than the rest of the basement, worn smooth around the handle. I knew I wasn't supposed to open it. I opened it anyway. The room beyond was small and empty except for scratch marks along the walls. Hundreds of them. Different heights, different angles, some deep, some shallow, none random. They formed circles, paths, patterns. On the floor, in the center of the room, was a single black hair. Thick, too thick. Behind me, Bishop purred. That was the moment I realized I was no longer being watched. I was being prepared. The climax came fast after that. I don't remember deciding to hurt him. I remember standing in the kitchen, knife in my hand, Bishop on the counter, looking at me with something like expectation. The air felt charged, heavy, like a storm about to break. I told myself this was the only way. I told myself I had to. The moment I lunged, he didn't run. He let me do it. The sound he made wasn't pain, it was relief. The blood was real, hot, sticky. It soaked into my hands, the counter, the floor. His body twitched, then went still. For a few seconds I thought I'd won. Then I felt something stretch inside my chest. A pressure, a shift, a familiar weight. I collapsed to the floor, gasping, hands clawing at my own throat as something inside me settled, curled, and purred. The house went quiet. Too quiet. I don't know how long it's been since then. Time doesn't behave the way it used to. I find black hairs in places I shouldn't. I wake up in rooms I don't remember walking into. Sometimes I catch my reflection watching me instead of the other way around. I haven't seen Bishop since that night, but I hear him inside me. If you're reading this, it's because I still have moments where I'm myself. Moments like this one, where I can warn you. If a black cat shows up at your door and doesn't make a sound, don't let it in. If you already have one and it feels heavier than it should, don't wait. Because once it finds a place it fits, it doesn't need the cat anymore.